Good evening. This is Russell Griffin, and it is time for the much anticipated Wednesday Stump Report. This week, I'm going to go into a subject called trucking in Maine, the transportation industry in Maine. And I'm going to talk about how the Canadians are subsidizing the trucking industry, and the Maine truckers cannot compete with the Canadians on trucking. I'm going to show you here, this is a map of Quebec, and this is the state of Maine. This shows Maine is really a triangle, and we're surrounded by Canada on three sides. We've got Montreal, Quebec. On our west flank, St. John's, New Brunswick, Moncton, Halifax, Nova Scotia. On our east flank, Quebec City, Chicoutimi. On our north flank. And we got the Liberals to the south. We're completely surrounded. And we got them right where we want them. Just like Chesty Pooler. But anyway, there's roughly 8 million people in Quebec. And another million in New Brunswick, another million in Nova Scotia, with the surrounding with Newfoundland and around. There's easily 10 million people surrounding Maine on three sides. As you can see, I think the people of Maine that haven't visited Canada, there's a lot of people that haven't visited Canada in the last 10 years. The development that's going on in Canada is unbelievable. The infrastructure that's being built in Canada, in Quebec, the population growth, the highways, the road systems that are being built, the bridges. It's just unbelievable the amount of work that's being done in Canada. And I don't think people in Maine, except a few people that travel there, understand how big that's become. And going forward in our future, in Maine, we have to figure out how to utilize that. Our geographic location is, we've lost our industry, we've lost some of our traditional things. This trucking is something that we need to be participating in with Canada. We're doing like 5% of the trucking to Canada now. I don't believe that it's more than 5% that Americans are hauling to or from Canada. It's all being done by Canadians. And I've drawn another map. You can see this is probably the world's worst map of Maine. But it shows, it gives you the idea. We have Quebec on both sides. And we've got New York and Boston to our south, and all the cities in the East Coast, everything's to the south. And we've got our roads, we've got 95 that comes from Canada in, and then we got from Calais comes in from the east, and we've got down 201 from Quebec City to Jackman and through Coburn Gore, and basically everything has to funnel through Maine. And if you just park on one of these truck stops or the roads, you'll see the Canadians. The Canadians' traffic is just unbelievable now. All you have to do is go to a truck stop to see that. But I'm going to tell you how we're not competing and why. We're not competing because the Canadians are subsidizing. They're subsidizing their drivers, they're subsidizing the trucking companies. If I'll put just a Canadian truck driver against an American truck driver, what he takes home a week, the Canadian has free health care. That's huge. A lot of us, we had health care, our companies provide it in our past history. With almost all of us have lost that now. If you're driving a truck now, you got to be with UPS or somebody to have full coverage now. It's pretty limited now. Almost everybody's got deductibles and paying for it. But the Canadian truck driver has health care, free. And then, these are some of the things that I know about, but I think there's more that I don't even know about. But his wife, when a Canadian truck driver's wife gets pregnant, paid maternity leave by the Quebec government. When their kids get older, subsidized daycare for their children. So a Canadian truck driver, his kids go to daycare, subsidized by the Quebec government. Then, a truck driver in Maine, how much does it cost to heat your house and pay your electric bill in January? There is Canadians that are heating their house in January and their electric bill for $250 a month. That might cost a truck driver in Maine $1,000 to do that, depending on your house. And then, have you seen all the equipment the Canadians are buying? All brand new trucks, all new trailers. The equipment is just unbelievable, we're seeing. And in Canada, if you start a business or you create a business, you go to the government, I'm going to do something to employ people. They're subsidizing them to get them started. They're helping them organizing it to get them started. But then the other thing that I've been noticing, I've got a diesel pickup. Go to Canada, gas up your diesel pickup. See what that costs at the pump. So I go to St. George. I know what it costs to fuel up a diesel pickup in Canada at the pump. Okay? I'm sitting on the border, and I'm watching all these Canadian trucks going back and forth. None of them are fueling up to go back home. They're coming down and doing a 3-day trip, wherever they go, New York City, Philadelphia, or however far they go. They're coming down. When they come back, they're crossing the border, and they're not fueling up. Why aren't they fueling up? Well, you know, our fuel's cheaper than theirs. You don't know why? They tell me that if they backhaul a load, they're creating business, and the government is subsidizing the fuel for the Canadians. That's just unbelievable. So we don't really know what they're paying for fuel. So if you're American, you know what your costs are. We don't know what these Canadians are paying. I'm telling you, there's something going on because the Americans can't do it. We're only hauling 5% of the product to or from Canada. The Canadians have 90% of it. And Maine, this is something we can do. Trucking is something we can do. We can send some of our kids, we should be teaching in high school, we should be getting class 1s. If you get a class 1 license, you can always drive a truck. If you can drive a truck and you're reasonably safe, no matter where you go in life, if you have to drive a truck, and it's not a bad job, but if you have to, you can always fall back on it, and that's a pretty good opportunity. And I think that it's not fair that we cannot compete with the Canadians. But I think that something has to be done. I have no problem with the Canadians working here. I've worked with them my whole life. They're good people. They don't come down here and steal. They're hard workers. They're doing what they can do, but the government is helping them. And that's the unfair part. That's the only part that I don't agree with. I can compete with anybody as long as it's fair. When it's unfair, that's not right. But I think all the truckers, they've got to join me on this. I hope this video gets shared. You need to get this out here. The only way it gets out there is being shared and to say that somebody is saying something about this. But this concludes my Wednesday Stump Report. Have a good week.